In Phoenix, the heat doesn't just press down, it preserves. It keeps secrets in asphalt, in cinder block walls, in the sweet stink of spilled milk baking behind a grocery store. When bodies start turning up along delivery routes with receipts stapled to their skin, each one a mundane list hiding a pattern, Phoenix PD does what it hates doing. It calls in Miles Harrington, the out-of-town specialist with a reputation for solving the cases that won't behave. Miles arrives with a notebook, a pager, and a sense that someone in this city is using the ordinary as camouflage and using him as the final ingredient. Desert Milk Run, a story by 10 Chapters Studio. Chapter 1. Route 6 doesn't miss. Phoenix Sky Harbor shimmered like it was being viewed through a glass of water. Miles Harrington stepped off the jetway into recycled air and a wall of dry heat that seemed to follow him indoors out of sheer stubbornness. A payphone bank sat near baggage claim, each handset slick from thousands of hands. He checked instinctively for a dial tone, old habit, then moved on. Detective Leela Moreno waited near the exit, short hair, tired eyes, blazer over a blouse like she'd slept in both. She didn't smile. That was a kind of courtesy. "Harrington?" she asked. "Miles," he said. "You're Moreno." "Lucky guess." She handed him a folder thick with photocopies. "Phoenix PD, homicide. We were told you like paper." "I like evidence that doesn't crash," Miles said, taking it. Outside, the sun hit like an accusation. Moreno's unmarked sedan smelled faintly of stale coffee and vinyl. On the dash, a Motorola pager vibrated once, then went still. "Your reputation got you this invite," she said as they pulled into traffic. "Not my idea. Chief hates outsiders." "So do I," Miles said. "Where are we going?" "The third one, fresh. Found an hour ago behind a food mart on Thomas." "Third one," Miles repeated. "So we're not starting at the beginning." Moreno's jaw tightened. "Beginning was 10 days ago. First body off I-17 frontage road. Second in a drainage canal near Glendale. Both men, both tied to the same grocery distributor." Miles opened the folder. Black and white photos. A man on his back on gritty dirt, shirt soaked dark. A stapled receipt fluttering near his collarbone like a white tongue. "What am I looking at?" Miles asked. Moreno glanced at the photos, then back to the road. "Receipts, grocery receipts. Everyone has one." Miles studied the printout. Milk, bread, lunch meat, dish soap, nothing exotic. Yet the receipt had been stapled, not taped, not placed, stapled to skin. Moreno glanced at the photos, then back to the road. "Receipts, grocery receipts. Everyone has one." Miles studied the printout. Milk, bread, deli turkey, dish soap, cough syrup. Nothing exotic, yet the receipt had been stapled, not taped, not placed, stapled to skin. "Stapler from an office?" he asked. "Industrial," Moreno said, "like warehouses use." Miles kept reading. The bottom of the receipt showed a timestamp and store number. The items were ordinary, but the quantities weren't. 3 gallons of milk, 6 loaves of bread, 12 cans of soup. The kind of shopping list a family would buy if they were preparing for a storm, except Phoenix didn't do storms, not like that. Moreno turned off onto a service road behind a row of beige buildings. A food mart sat like a square tooth beneath a buzzing sign. Yellow tape cordoned off the alley. A patrol car idled, its light bar dead, but its presence loud. Miles stepped out and felt the alley heat rise to meet him. A uniformed officer lifted the tape. "Detective, consultant." "Consultant," the officer repeated with the faint distaste of a man handed a stranger's religion. The body lay near a dumpster, placed with care, one arm angled out as if reaching for something that wasn't there. The man's face was bruised, eyes half-lidded. A receipt was stapled to his sternum. 2 staples, neat, clinical. Miles crouched without touching. He looked at the staples first, then at the receipt. The paper was slightly curled at the edges from the heat, but the ink was crisp. Moreno stood behind him. M.E. says blunt force to the head, no defensive wounds, like he never saw it coming. Or like he couldn't fight. Drugged? Possibly. Or restrained. Miles scanned the ground. Grit, a few cigarette butts, a crushed styrofoam cup. No blood spatter consistent with a beating. The damage had likely happened elsewhere. He read the receipt again. Food Mart 0127. Time 2:14 a.m. Items: milk, bread, deli turkey, dish soap, cough syrup. Cough syrup. Miles's attention snagged. In the 90s, people stole cough syrup for the dextromethorphan buzz. But on this receipt, it was purchased, not stolen. Yet it was a weird item for 2:14 a.m. grocery run. He pulled a small notebook from his jacket and wrote, milk, bread, turkey, soap, cough syrup. Look at the quantities, he said, more to himself than Moreno. It's consistent. It's a list, Moreno said. Same stuff every time. Different stores, same list, like a ritual. Miles stood. Who is he? Moreno checked her notes. Name's Eric Palmer. Worked for Sunridge Distribution. He drove a refrigerated truck. Route 6. Milk run, Miles murmured. What? Old term, Miles said. Routine deliveries. Same stops, same pattern. Moreno exhaled sharply, frustrated. We've got nothing. No witnesses, no cameras in this alley. We pulled payphone records near the first scene. Nothing useful. Every time we get close, the trail goes dry. Miles looked at the Food Mart's back door. A metal door, scuffed with a keypad lock. A delivery entrance. You said all 3 are tied to the same distributor, Moreno said. Sunridge supplies half the small grocery chains in the valley. Miles walked to the keypad, careful not to cross where techs were working. Who has access to this door? Manager, assistant manager, night clerk, delivery drivers, anyone with the code, Moreno said. And yes, we've changed codes, twice. Still happened. Miles stared at the door as if it might confess. You called me because this case is embarrassing. Moreno's eyes flashed. We called you because someone is using our city like a board game, and because the last guy you helped in Chicago wouldn't stop praising you. Flattery is a weapon, Miles said. A tech approached, gloved hands holding an evidence bag with something metallic inside. Detective Moreno, he said, found this in the dumpster. Moreno took it. Inside the bag sat a receipt stapler, heavy duty, the kind that could punch through cardboard. The handle was smeared with something dark and sticky. Blood? Moreno asked. Could be, the tech said. Also could be soda syrup. Dumpster's a buffet of fluids. Miles leaned closer. Something else was taped to the stapler's underside, a small strip of receipt paper, folded tight. Moreno opened the bag carefully and read what was visible without touching. It wasn't a list of items, it was a sequence of numbers, printed faintly as if copied. 06 12 03 17. Moreno frowned. A code. Miles's pager vibrated once on his belt, like a tap on the shoulder. He checked it. A single number displayed, no message, just digits. 061-203-17. He looked up slowly, heat suddenly irrelevant. Moreno saw his face change. "That your number?" she asked. "No," Miles said. His voice went flat. "That's the code." Moreno stared at the pager as if it had grown teeth. "How did—" Miles slid the pager back onto his belt. He didn't answer because the answer was the worst kind. Someone had his number. Someone wanted him here. Someone was counting on him to do exactly what he always did. Miles looked back at the body, then at the stapler, then at the receipt curled by heat. "Moreno," he said, "tell your chief I'm not leaving Phoenix until we understand why the killer just paged me." And as he spoke, the Food Mart's back door clicked, soft, mechanical, like a lock releasing. Everyone turned. The door opened a fraction on its own, the black line widening into darkness, inviting them in. Chapter 2. The List That Looks Like Food. The back room smelled of cardboard, bleach, and cold air leaking from the walk-in freezer. A night clerk stood trembling by the counter, eyes flicking between Moreno's badge and Miles's face like she was trying to decide which one to fear more. "I didn't open it," she insisted, voice thin. "I swear, it just clicked." Moreno held up both hands. "Nobody's arresting you. What's your name?" "Jenna. Jenna Crawl." Miles watched the door. It wasn't a dramatic swing, no wind, no force, just a latch disengaging, the kind of thing that happened when a code was entered correctly. "Keypad logs?" Miles asked. Moreno glanced at a tech behind her. "This store has a cheap system, no logs, just code entry." Miles nodded once, mental note. Old locks, old blind spots, the 90s were full of them. He stepped closer to the keypad and looked at the worn numbers. The 1 and 2 were shiny from use, so were the 0 and 6, delivery codes perhaps. He didn't touch. "Jenna," he said, keeping his tone even. "Who else was here tonight?" "Just me, and the driver came at like 1:50, dropped off dairy, signed the sheet, left." "What driver?" "Sunridge, Route 6, Eric," she said, and her voice broke as if she'd only just realized the body outside had a name she recognized. Moreno stepped in. "Did Eric seem normal?" Jenna blinked hard. "He was tired, same as always. He joked about the heat. He said he'd been getting weird calls." Miles's eyes narrowed. "Calls to where?" "The payphone out front. He didn't have a cell. He'd use the payphone, punch in some long-distance card number. He said someone kept calling him there like they knew his schedule." Moreno's gaze snapped to Miles. Payphones again. Miles felt the case tilt. "Did you hear anything? The caller?" "No," said Jenna. "He'd walk away, like he didn't want anyone to hear."
Miles looked at the clipboard on the counter. Delivery sheets, times, signatures. He asked Moreno for gloves and received them without comment. He flipped through the pages slowly, reading the mundane like it was scripture. Route 6, Food Mart 0127, 1:52 a.m. Signature, Eric Palmer. 2 nights ago, same time. 4 nights ago, same time. Routine, Miles murmured. Moreno leaned in. He was predictable. "Predictability is a gift," Miles said. He pulled the receipt photocopies from the folder and laid them on the counter like tarot cards. Same items, same quantities, different stores. The times varied slightly but stayed between midnight and 3. Moreno tapped one. "We ran the store numbers. All small chains, all supplied by Sunridge." Miles nodded. "The receipts are not trophies, they're instructions." Moreno stared. "Instructions for what?" Miles pointed to the list on the receipt. "Milk, bread, turkey, Soap, cough syrup. Look at the first letters. Moreno frowned, then slowly mouthed them. M, B, T, S, C. Miles wrote them in his notebook. M, B, T, S, C. Moreno's expression sharpened. That spells nothing. Not yet, said Miles, but the killer wants us to try. He flipped to the bottom of the receipt. The total, the tax, the time, the cashier ID. Cashier IDs, he said. Are they consistent? Moreno nodded reluctantly. Different stores, different cashiers. Then it's not about who rang it up. It's about the system. Miles tapped the receipt. The list is the mask. The pattern is underneath. He glanced at Jenna. You said Eric got weird calls. Did he tell you what they said? Jenna shook her head, then hesitated. He said the voice sounded like it was smiling, like someone talking through a grin. It would say, "Don't miss a stop." Morello exhaled through her nose. Jesus. Miles looked at the delivery sheet again. Route 6 doesn't miss, he said, thinking of Chapter 1's phrase. So, the killer chose him because he was reliable. A tech appeared in the doorway. Detective, we checked the dumpster for more. Found a stack of receipts. Moreno's shoulders tensed. Real receipts. Blank, like unused, from a register roll. Miles took them, gloved hands, careful. On the top receipt, someone had printed, using a dot matrix printer, faint but unmistakable, another sequence. Moreno swallowed. That's this store. Miles's pager vibrated again. This time, a message. Next, 51st and McDowell, 0111. Moreno stared at him. You're not telling me that's random. Miles didn't lie. It's not. Moreno's voice went tight. He's using you as a dispatch line. Miles felt the familiar cold of being pulled into someone else's design. In the 90s, the world wasn't connected by smartphones, but it was connected by routine and paper and predictable human habits. A killer didn't need satellites. He needed schedules. Who else drives Route 6? Miles asked. Moreno answered immediately, like she'd been holding it. 4 drivers, all men, same shift rotation. Names, Miles said. Moreno read from her notes. Eric Palmer, Dale Sutter, Miguel Rivas, and, she paused, and a supervisor who covers routes when needed, Calvin Pike. Miles's eyes lifted. Supervisor. Moreno nodded. Union guy, been with Sunridge forever. Miles wrote the names down. His pen scratched like a match. Outside, the alley was a furnace. Inside, the freezer hummed like a low warning. Miles looked at Moreno. We go to 51st and McDowell, he said. We don't wait for a body. We catch him before he staples another receipt to someone's chest. Moreno's face hardened into resolve, but there was a crack of fear behind it. And if it's a trap. Miles pocketed his notebook. Then he's finally being honest, he said, because this whole thing has been a trap from the start. As they moved toward the door, Jenna whispered, barely audible, Detective? Moreno turned back. Jenna's eyes were wet. If he was scared, why didn't he just stop coming? Miles answered before Moreno could. Because someone convinced him the route was safer than breaking it. Moreno blinked. How do you know that? Miles didn't look away. Because that's what the pager message is doing to me. And somewhere deep in Phoenix, a payphone rang, unanswered, ringing into heat. Chapter 3. Payphone Geometry. 51st and McDowell was a knot of asphalt and neon. Gas station, liquor store, a late-night diner with a flickering sign.
The payphone stood outside the liquor store like a relic nobody wanted, but everybody still used. A torn yellow pages hung from its shelf. Long-distance card numbers were scratched into the metal with keys. Moreno parked across the street, lights off. 2 uniforms sat in a second car, pretending to be bored. A third unit circled the block. This was as covert as police work got when everyone involved was nervous. Miles watched the payphone through the windshield. If the killer called Eric here, he'll call again. Moreno's hand tightened on the steering wheel. We pulled phone company records from the first 2 scenes. It's slow. Paper requests, subpoenas. We're not getting miracles tonight. We don't need a miracle, Miles said. We need timing. His pager vibrated. No message, just the vibration, like a heartbeat. Moreno's pager went off too. She looked down, then at him. My number, she said quietly. He has mine now. Miles felt the case narrow into a corridor. He wants to control the room, he said. He's widening the audience. Across the street, a man walked out of the liquor store, plastic bag swinging. He paused by the payphone, fished out a card and started dialing. His shoulders were hunched like he expected the air itself to hit him. Moreno sat up. That's Dale Sutter, she said. Sunridge driver. Miles' voice stayed calm. He's using the payphone. Same habit, same vulnerability. Moreno reached for her radio, then stopped. If we spook him, he bolts. Miles opened his door. Then we don't spook him. We talk. Moreno grabbed his sleeve. You're not bulletproof, Harrington. I'm not stupid either, Miles said, and stepped into the heat. He crossed the street at a steady pace, hands visible. The smell of gasoline and hot rubber rose from the road. Dale was on the phone, voice low, eyes darting. Miles stopped 3 feet away. Dale Sutter.
Dale flinched hard, nearly dropping the receiver. He stared at Miles like he'd seen a ghost. "Who the hell are you?" Dale hissed.
Miles Harrington, Miles said. Phoenix PD asked me to help. You work Route 6. Dale's throat bobbed. I'm on break. Who are you calling? Miles asked. Dale's eyes flicked toward the darkness down the sidewalk. None of your business. Miles nodded once. Is it the smiling voice? Dale's face went grey. His grip tightened on the handset until his knuckles went white. You heard it too. Miles didn't answer the implied question. Instead, what did it tell you? Dale's mouth worked like he was chewing glass. It said if I missed a stop, my daughter would get hurt. Miles felt something cold settle in his stomach. That wasn't a puzzle. That was leverage. Moreno approached from behind, badge visible. Dale, we can protect you.
Dale laughed, sharp and broken. Protect me? You can't even protect... He stopped himself, eyes flashing toward the alley beside the liquor store. Miles followed his gaze. A van sat there, engine off, too dark to see inside. Nothing moved. What's your daughter's name? Miles asked. Dale swallowed. Emily. She's 9. Moreno's voice softened. Where is she right now? Home, said Dale, with my sister. Miles held Dale's gaze. Did the voice prove it knew her? He asked. Did it say something only you'd recognize? Dale's breathing went shallow. He told me to come here. He said I'd get instructions. Moreno reached for the handset. Give me the phone. Dale hesitated, then thrust it at her like it was burning him. Moreno put it to her ear. Hello? Static. Then a click. The line went dead. Miles stared at the payphone cradle. Whoever had been on the other end had hung up the instant Moreno spoke, like the caller only wanted Dale, not the police. Moreno slammed the handset back into place, frustrated. Coward. Miles's pager vibrated again. Message. Did you think I'd talk to her? Moreno stared at the digits on his pager, face draining. He's nearby. Miles scanned the street. Cars, shadows, neon. A man at the diner window stirring coffee. A woman walking fast with keys between her fingers. The van in the alley. He stepped closer to Dale. "Who else got calls?" he asked. Dale looked at the ground. "All of us," he whispered. "Eric, Miguel, me, and Calvin." Miles's eyes sharpened. "Calvin Pike." Dale nodded. "Supervisor. He said he's handling it. He said the calls are a test, like some sick loyalty thing. He said if we keep the route perfect, nobody gets hurt." Moreno's voice hardened. "He told you not to talk to police." Dale didn't deny it. His shame was answer enough. Miles's pager vibrated again. New message. "The list is a map. Follow it." Moreno's radio crackled. One of the circling units. "Detective Moreno, we've got movement. Dark van leaving alley, heading south." Moreno snapped into action. "Stop it," she barked into the radio. The van rolled out slow, deliberate, as if daring them. The uniforms surged, tires squealing. Miles watched the van's taillights disappear into the night. He looked back at Dale, who was shaking. "You said Calvin called it a loyalty test." Dale's voice broke. "He said if we fail, we'll be replaced." Miles felt the series breadcrumb forming, a system that rewarded obedience, punished deviation, and used fear as a management tool. He'd seen that shape before, in other cities, other crimes, different masks, same bones. Moreno's radio crackled again. "Van didn't stop. We're in pursuit. No plate." Miles's pager vibrated one last time, the digits crisp in the dark. "You're chasing my shadow." Miles looked toward the direction the van had gone. "He wants us chasing cars," he said. Moreno's eyes narrowed. "Then what should we be chasing?" Miles turned to Dale. "Your supervisor," he said, "Calvin Pike." And just then Dale's own pager went off, an older model, cracked screen. He stared at it, lips trembling. "What?" Miles asked. Dale showed it. "Emily's bike is on the street." Dale made a sound that wasn't a word. Moreno grabbed her radio, already calling for units to Dale's sister's address. Miles stood very still, heat and neon and fear boiling together. The killer wasn't just making a pattern. He was making hostages. Chapter 4. Sunridge After Midnight. Sunridge Distribution sat on the edge of the industrial district, a sprawl of loading bays and refrigerated trailers lit by high sodium lamps. At night it looked like a shipyard for machines. Miles and Moreno arrived behind 2 patrol cars, the sirens off but the urgency loud. Inside, the warehouse air was cold enough to raise gooseflesh, refrigeration battling desert. Workers moved like ghosts in reflective vests, forklifts beeping in slow reverse. A bulletin board displayed safety rules and union notices. Someone had pinned a cartoon of a sweating milk carton under the words, "Route 6, don't miss." Miles stared at it longer than anyone else would. Calvin Pike met them near the supervisor's office. He was broad-shouldered, with a graying moustache and a confidence that felt practiced. His handshake was firm, his smile shallow. "Calvin Pike," Moreno replied. "We need to talk about your drivers." Calvin's eyes flicked to Miles. "And you are?" "Miles Harrington," Miles said. Recognition flashed, fast, then covered. "Ah," said Calvin, "the famous consultant. They flew you in for this." "They called," Miles said, "because bodies are showing up with your receipts." Calvin's expression tightened into offense. "We distribute groceries, Harrington. We don't distribute corpses. Your drivers are being contacted, threatened. One driver's child was just targeted." Calvin's eyebrows lifted. "Targeted how?" Moreno didn't give details. "Enough that we're taking it seriously. Who has access to driver schedules?" Calvin spread his hands. "Dispatch, me, the office girls. Drivers talk too, you know." Miles scanned the supervisor's office through the glass. Filing cabinets, a fax machine, a dot matrix printer. On the desk, a stapler heavy enough to break bones. Miles pointed with his chin. "You keep industrial staplers in your office."
Calvin glanced back amused. "Paperwork, union forms, delivery manifests. You'd be amazed how many pages you can't staple with a cheap one." Miles let the comment hang. "We found one in a dumpster behind Food Mart," he said. Calvin's smile faltered. "Behind Food Mart? My guys don't dump tools there." Moreno stepped closer. "Calvin, we need your route sheets. Tonight. All of them." Calvin exhaled like a man being inconvenienced by a fire. "I'll have dispatch print them." As he turned, Miles saw it. Calvin's pager, clipped to his belt. Newer than the driver's. The casing wasn't cracked. The screen was clean. Someone who cared about his tools. Miles followed Calvin into the office. The air smelled of toner and coffee. Calvin flipped through stacks of papers, moving with quick familiarity. He wasn't nervous, or he was a master at hiding it. Moreno leaned over the desk, eyes catching on a sheet with rows of numbers. "What's that?" Calvin slid his hand over it, casual. "Inventory codes." Miles watched the movement. Too smooth, protective. Moreno didn't bite. "Drivers are being contacted at payphones. How would a caller know their habits?" Calvin shrugged. "Everyone knows. Half the guys don't trust cell phones, think the government listens." Miles looked at the fax machine. A stack of receipts sat beside it, blank register paper, the kind found behind Food Mart. Calvin noticed Miles looking. "Stores send us receipts sometimes, discrepancies, returns." "Blank ones?" Miles asked. Calvin's nostrils flared. "Are you accusing me of something, Harrington?" Miles didn't blink. "I'm accusing someone of something. You're simply in the room." Moreno's radio crackled. "Unit at Dale's sister's address. Detective, we found the bike outside. Ribbons loose. Kids inside, safe. Door was unlocked, though. No forced entry." Moreno's shoulders loosened slightly. Dale's daughter, alive. For now. Calvin's expression shifted into outrage. "Someone went to a child's house. That's sick." Miles watched him as he said it. The emotion read real, but Miles didn't trust his own readings anymore. Killers were often better actors than cops. Moreno turned sharply. "Calvin, your drivers said you told them to keep the route perfect, not to talk to police." Calvin's eyes flashed. "They said that?" "They did," Moreno said. Calvin leaned back, offended. "I told them not to panic. Panic causes accidents. You want refrigerated trucks flipping on the 51? You want dead drivers and milk running down the highway? I manage risk." Miles's pager vibrated. Message. "Ask him about the list." Miles looked at Moreno, then at Calvin. "What does the list mean?" Miles asked. Calvin's face went still. "What list?" "The grocery items. Milk, bread, turkey, soap, cough syrup. Same every time." Calvin laughed, one hard bark. "That's what you flew in for? A shopping list?" Miles stepped closer, voice low. "It's not food," he said. "It's a map or a message, and whoever is doing this, whoever is stapling receipts to bodies, wants me to follow it." Calvin's gaze darted just once to the filing cabinet. Miles saw it. He moved without warning, opening the cabinet drawer. Moreno stiffened, then moved to cover him. Inside were route sheets and something else, a manila envelope labeled Route 6 Incidents. Miles pulled it out. Calvin's hand shot forward. "Don't," Calvin said, voice sharp now. Miles froze. The room tightened like a wire. Moreno's hand went to her holster. "Step back, Calvin." Calvin's chest rose and fell. He looked at Moreno, then at Miles, then at the door, calculating. Miles opened the envelope. Inside, photocopied receipts, each with certain letters circled in pen. The circled letters, when read in order, formed a phrase, "Bring Miles home." Miles felt his pulse hit his throat. "This is about me," he said, voice almost a whisper. Calvin's face drained. "That's not—" Moreno's radio crackled again, urgent. "Detective, we found a body at a drainage canal near 83rd, fresh, receipt stapled, same list." Moreno swore under her breath. "That makes 4. Miles stared at the circled letters again. "Bring Miles home." Calvin's pager vibrated. He looked down instinctively. Miles saw the digits reflect in his eyes before Calvin could hide it. Moreno snapped. "What does it say?" Calvin swallowed. "Nothing," he lied. Miles's own pager vibrated immediately after, as if answering Calvin's lie with truth. He read his page. "Did you?" Miles looked up at Calvin. "You're receiving messages too," he said. Calvin's voice went rough. "Everyone is." Moreno's eyes narrowed. "Then show us." Calvin hesitated. That hesitation was the first honest thing he'd done all night. And in that pause, between compliance and control, Miles understood something. Calvin wasn't the architect. He was either a pawn or a collaborator who didn't realize the leash was around his own neck. Chapter 5. The Canal Receipt. The drainage canal was a concrete scar cutting through the city, collecting runoff and trash and the occasional tragedy. Floodlights washed the scene in harsh white, turning the desert night into an interrogation room. Miles stood beside Moreno as the medical examiner's team worked. The body was positioned oddly, one leg bent, one straight, like a mannequin arranged by someone with patience. The receipt was stapled to the victim's upper chest. The paper lay flatter than the others, as if protected from heat. Moreno read the victim's ID aloud. "Miguel Rivas, Sunridge." Miles closed his eyes briefly. "Route 6, he said. Moreno's face hardened. 2 drivers dead, 1 threatened, and Calvin Pike playing dumb. Miles stared at Miguel's hands. Clean nails, no bruising, no sign of struggle. Like Eric, like the others, moved, placed. A tech approached with a clear evidence bag. "Detective, found this by the canal wall." Inside, a long-distance phone card, scratched and worn like it'd been used until the numbers were nearly faded. Miles felt a familiar chill. "That's how he calls," he said. Moreno's brows pulled together. "We can trace it." "In the 90s, Miles said. "Maybe, if the company keeps logs. But it'll be paper. Slow." The killer was operating in the gaps between systems, in delays, in bureaucratic friction. He was using the era like armor. Miles knelt near the receipt, without touching, and studied the printed items again. Same list, same quantities, but something new had been added this time. A final item. Map. Moreno leaned down beside him. That wasn't on the earlier ones. Miles' pager vibrated. Message. "Smart girl. She'll see it." Moreno saw his face. "He's talking about me." Miles nodded. He's expanding the game. The ME called out, "Detective, there's something in his pocket." A gloved hand produced a folded scrap of receipt paper, not from a register roll, but torn from something else. On it, someone had written in block letters, BTSCM. Moreno frowned. Those letters again. Miles swapped the order in his mind. MBTSC, BTSCM, like the killer was rearranging them, daring them to find the right sequence. Those are initials, Moreno said slowly. But for what? Miles stood, scanning the canal, the street lights, the nearby footbridge. A man walked a dog on the sidewalk above, pausing to stare. A couple leaned on a car hood, pretending not to watch. Could be street names, said Miles, or stops, or victims, or... Moreno's gaze snapped, or intersections. Miles turned to her. Milk run, delivery stops, they're all at intersections. Moreno's eyes went sharp. Thomas, McDowell, Glendale, I-17, those are places. Miles pulled out his notebook and wrote the intersections they had so far. Thomas, 51st and McDowell, I-17 frontage, Glendale Canal, 83rd Canal.
Find common grocery stops, Miles said, where Route 6 runs. Moreno waved over an officer. Get me Sunridge route mats, physical, now. A few minutes later, a Sunridge dispatcher arrived, pale and sweating, holding a laminated map of delivery routes, creases and marker lines. It looked like it had lived on a wall for years. Miles spread it on the hood of Moreno's car. The map showed Route 6 snaking across Phoenix, looping through neighborhoods and strip malls. Moreno traced with her finger. Thomas, here. 51st and McDowell, here. Glendale Canal is near a delivery stop. 83rd is close to another. Miles watched the pattern take shape. The stops formed a loose curve, almost a circle. Moreno's pager vibrated. She checked it, face tightening. He's paging me now, too. Miles's pager vibrated in tandem. Same message on both.
Meet me where the list begins. Moreno looked up. Where does it begin? Miles stared at the map. He saw a small symbol near the edge of Route 6, Sunridge's depot, the warehouse. But that was obvious. Too obvious. He scanned the receipt items again. Milk, bread, turkey, soap, cough syrup, map. First letters. MBTSCM. Moreno whispered. MBTSCM. Miles thought of Phoenix street names, common ones. McDowell, Bethany Home, Thomas, Scottsdale, Camelback, Maryvale. His brain searched for fit. Moreno's eyes widened suddenly. McDowell, Bethany Home, Thomas, Scottsdale, Camelback, Maryvale. Miles looked at her. Those are major east-west corridors, he said. Not just corridors, Moreno said, voice tight. They're lines. They run parallel. Miles felt the trap tighten. The list isn't groceries. It's streets. Moreno traced those streets on the map with her finger. McDowell, Bethany Home, Thomas, Camelback. The lines formed a band across Phoenix. Miles followed the band until Moreno stopped at a point where Route 6 crossed each line, like a needle stitching fabric. Moreno's finger hovered over an intersection near a cluster of small groceries. Here, said Moreno, all lines converge within a few blocks, a hub.
Miles read the nearest cross streets. His stomach tightened. The hub sat near an old strip mall with a diner, a liquor store, and, marked in faded ink, a payphone. 51st and McDowell. The list begins where it first contacted Dale, Moreno said. Miles's pager vibrated again. Bring the supervisor. Moreno stared at the message, then looked toward the warehouse map as if it might point to Calvin Pike. Miles didn't hesitate. "Calvin's not just involved," he said. "He's the key, even if he's not the killer." Moreno's jaw flexed. "We bring him in." Miles nodded. "And we do it now." As they folded the map, a tech called out from the canal edge, "Detective Moreno, look at this." He held up a Polaroid photo, fresh, still glossy, of Miles standing at the canal, looking down at the body. Moreno's blood ran cold. "That was taken tonight," she said. Miles took the Polaroid carefully. On the back, written in the same block letters, "You're right on time." Miles looked into the darkness beyond the floodlights and realized the killer wasn't just ahead of them. He was watching them watch.
Chapter 6. Calvin Pike's Story. They brought Calvin Pike in at dawn, not in handcuffs at first, just a conversation at the station that had the sharp edges of a trap. Calvin protested, loudly, in front of his warehouse workers, making sure everyone saw him as a wronged man. Inside the interview room, the air was stale and cold. A tape recorder sat on the table, its red light ready. A legal pad. 2 foam cups of coffee that tasted like burnt apology. Moreno sat across from Calvin. Miles sat slightly back, not hiding, not looming, just present. A third chair held Calvin's pager in an evidence bag. Calvin stared at it like it was a snake. "I want that back," he said. Moreno's tone was flat. "After you explain why you're receiving the same messages as the killer's victims." Calvin's moustache twitched. "I told you, everyone got calls, everyone got threats." Miles leaned forward slightly. "You didn't tell us about the envelope, Route 6, incidents." Calvin's eyes flashed. "That envelope was my documentation. I keep notes when something's wrong." "Notes with circled letters spelling, 'Bring Miles home,'" Moreno said. Calvin swallowed. "I didn't circle those." Moreno clicked the tape recorder on. The mechanical whir filled the room like insects. "Calvin," Moreno said, "start at the beginning." Calvin's jaw clenched. "Beginning is Sunridge," he said. "It's always Sunridge. We run a tight operation. Routes, schedules. If you miss, product spoils. Stores lose money. Customers complain." Miles watched his hands, big, calloused hands that could drive a stapler through paper like it was butter. Moreno's voice sharpened. "When did the calls start?"
Calvin exhaled, defeated by the question. 2 weeks ago," he said. "At first it was just a voice. It would call the payphones at our stops. It would say, 'Don't miss a stop,' like a joke." "And you thought that was funny?" Moreno asked. "No," Calvin snapped. "I thought it was some idiot messing with my drivers." Miles spoke quietly. Then it escalated. Calvin's eyes flicked to Miles. "Yeah, it escalated." Moreno waited. Silence stretched until Calvin filled it. "It started naming things," Calvin said. "Personal things. A kid's bike ribbon, a wife's dentist appointment, a driver's old DUI from 1989, stuff nobody should know unless they were watching." Moreno's gaze went cold. "So you knew your drivers were being stalked?" Calvin's voice rose. "And what did you want me to do? Tell them to quit? Shut down Route 6? You understand what happens if we stop? People lose jobs. Stores get empty shelves. You think that's nothing?" Miles's eyes narrowed. "So you chose compliance?" Calvin slammed his palm on the table. "I chose stability." Moreno didn't flinch. "Stability got Eric Palmer killed." Calvin's face twisted. "Eric didn't listen." Miles leaned in. "Explain." Calvin stared at the table, then spoke like he was vomiting truth. "Eric said he was going to the police. He said he wasn't playing.
I told him to wait. I told him to keep the route clean until I figured it out. And then he died, Moreno said. Calvin's voice went smaller. Yeah.
Miles watched Calvin's shame. It looked real, but Miles had learned to treat remorse like fingerprints, useful but not proof of innocence. Moreno slid a photo across the table, the industrial stapler found in the dumpster. Recognize it? Calvin's eyes flicked over it. Looks like ours, he said. Lots of places use them. Miles held Calvin's gaze. The killer paged me, he said, and your cabinet held receipts with letters circled to form a message about me. So tell me, Calvin, why me? Calvin's mouth opened, closed. I don't know, he said, but it sounded like a man lying to himself more than to them. Moreno pulled out the Polaroid taken at the canal and placed it down. Someone photographed him last night. That means the killer's close enough to see faces. Calvin stared at the photo, then his eyes darted to the mirror, one-way glass. You think it's one of my guys, he said softly. Miles nodded. Or someone with access to your routines. Calvin's shoulders sagged. We had a security contractor last month, he said suddenly, for theft. Pallets missing. We hired a guy to watch our yard at night. He quit after a week. Moreno's eyes sharpened. Name? Calvin hesitated. Rudy. Last name, Moreno pressed. Calvin swallowed. Rudy Vance. Miles made a note. Security contractor meant someone who could watch habits, learn schedules, memorize payphone locations. Moreno stood abruptly. We're running him. Calvin's voice snapped. Wait, what about me? You think I'm just a fool?
Miles looked at Calvin. You're not a fool, he said. You're a man who tried to manage a killer like a supply problem. Calvin's eyes glistened, angry. I was trying to protect my drivers. You protected the route, Moreno said, not the people. Calvin flinched. Miles's pager vibrated. Message. The supervisor lies best when he thinks it's for the greater good. Moreno's pager vibrated too. Same message. She stared at it, then at Calvin. You're in contact with him, she said. Calvin's voice rose. No. Miles watched Calvin's face. Not fear, something else. Recognition, the briefest flicker of it. Miles leaned forward, voice low. Calvin, he said, who taught you to think like this? Who made you believe obedience was protection? Calvin's jaw trembled. You don't understand, he whispered. Moreno slammed her palm on the table. Then make us understand. Calvin looked up, and for the first time his confidence cracked completely. The voice, he said, it doesn't just threaten. It recruits. Miles felt the room tilt. Recruits how? Calvin swallowed hard. It said Route 6 was a test, that people who keep order deserve to be spared, that people who break routines deserve what they get. Moreno stared. That's a cult. Calvin's eyes flicked to Miles. No, he whispered. It's a philosophy. Miles thought of the phrase from the cabinet, bring Miles home. Not bring him here, home. Someone believed Miles belonged in their system. Miles's pager vibrated again, final message for the morning. Tonight, the hub, come alone or lose a child. Miles looked at Moreno, then at Calvin. The killer knows Dale's daughter, Miles said. Moreno's face went pale with rage. We're not going alone. Miles's voice was steady, but his stomach was stone. He's forcing a choice, he said, and he's betting we'll choose wrong. Chapter 7. The Hub. By nightfall, 51st and McDowell felt different, like a stage after the audience has arrived. The diner's neon buzzed louder than it should. Cars rolled through the intersection slowly, drivers peering at shadows. The payphone stood outside the liquor store, gleaming under the streetlight like an altar. Moreno had units hidden in plain sight, a broken-down car near the curb, an undercover couple in the diner, uniforms staged 2 blocks away. Dale Sutter sat in an unmarked car with a patrol officer, face hollow, eyes fixed on the street, like his gaze could keep his daughter safe. Miles didn't like any of it. The killer had anticipated pressure before. He'd been ahead every time the police tried to outnumber him. But letting Dale's daughter remain a lever was not acceptable. Moreno approached Miles where he stood behind the diner, out of view. She said, "We're not doing come alone." Miles watched the payphone from the alley's mouth. "We won't," he agreed, "but we have to make him think we will." Moreno's jaw tightened. "You're the bait." Miles didn't sugarcoat it. "I'm the target," he said. "Always have been." His pager vibrated. A single line. Payphone 911. Moreno checked her watch. 9:08. "You want me to answer it?" Miles said. Moreno nodded. "We've got a line trace running." "In 1996, Miles said. "Good luck." Moreno's eyes flashed. "Try anyway." Miles walked toward the payphone slowly, letting the street see him, letting the killer see him. His heartbeat stayed low. Fear was a tool, but it couldn't be allowed to drive. At 9:11 on the dot, the payphone rang. The sound cut through traffic noise like a needle. Miles stepped up, lifted the receiver, and held it to his ear. Static. Then a voice, male, calm, with that strange quality Jenna had described, smiling through words. "Miles Harrington," the voice said, "right on time." Moreno's voice came through his earpiece, wire in place. "Keep him talking." Miles stared at the liquor store window, seeing his own reflection distorted in glass. "You paged me," he said. "You killed people to do it. I corrected a system. Systems fail when people improvise." Miles's hand tightened on the handset. "You threatened a child." A soft chuckle. "And you came, like I knew you would." Moreno's earpiece hissed. "Trace isn't catching." Miles kept his voice flat. "What do you want?" "I want you to stop pretending you're outside it. You live by patterns too, Miles. You collect them, you solve them, you respect them." Miles felt the words slide under his skin. "You think we're the same." "We are," the voice said. "Difference is, I don't lie about it." Miles glanced down the street. A dark van rolled by, slow, windows tinted, a shadow passing. "Where is Dale's daughter?" Miles asked. The voice paused, then, "Safe for now." Miles forced his tone steady. "If you touch her, you'll do what? Solve me harder?" Moreno's voice in his ear. "Miles, keep him on. Unit spotted a van circling." Miles kept the line open. "Why Route 6?" Miles asked. "Because it's obedience made physical. A line drawn across a city, a promise kept, and then someone broke it." "Eric," Miles said. A quiet, satisfied sound. Yes, Eric thought he could go outside the route, outside the agreement, so he became an example. Moreno's earpiece crackled. "We have eyes on Calvin Pike. He's here." Miles's stomach tightened. Calvin wasn't supposed to be here. They told him to stay at the station. Miles scanned the diner parking lot. A broad-shouldered figure leaned against a car. Too casual. Calvin. The voice on the phone said, almost tenderly, "He came too, didn't he? Calvin likes order. Calvin likes being useful." Miles's blood went cold. "You told him to come." The voice said, "I told him he could be spared. People do anything for the illusion of safety." Moreno's earpiece crackled. "We're grabbing Calvin." Miles kept speaking into the receiver. "If you're watching us," he said, "then you know you won't walk away." The voice chuckled. "I don't need to walk away. I need you to walk toward." The payphone line clicked. A pause. Then the voice returned, sharper. "Look under the payphone shelf," it said. Miles didn't move at first. Moreno's voice snapped, "Don't touch anything." Miles shifted his stance slightly and looked. Under the shelf, taped neatly, a small cassette tape, label blank. The voice said, "That's your lesson." Moreno's voice tightened. "Bomb risk." Miles kept his voice neutral. "What's on the tape?" "Truth, the part you keep trying to avoid." Miles stared at the tape. "And the child?" Another pause. Then, "Ask Calvin." The line went dead.
Moreno's voice turned sharp. "Miles, step away now." Miles replaced the handset slowly, eyes scanning. The van again, farther down, turning. And then Dale's pager went off in the unmarked car. He let out a strangled cry. Moreno's radio exploded with voices. Moreno grabbed the radio. "Dale, what?" Dale stumbled out of the car, face white. It says Emily is at the diner, in the bathroom, alone." Moreno's eyes widened. "She's here?" Miles's mind snapped. The killer didn't need to kidnap her from home. He could move her into the trap. Moreno barked orders into the radio. "Lock down the diner. Check bathrooms, now." Units surged. The undercover couple stood, drawing attention. The entire scene shifted, loud, visible, panicked. Exactly what the killer wanted. Miles looked at the payphone again. The cassette tape sat there like a dare. And then he saw it. A man across the street, near the diner window, holding a disposable camera. He lifted it slightly, aiming. Miles stepped toward him, fast. The man lowered the camera and walked away into traffic like he belonged there. Miles felt his pulse spike. Moreno's voice was a storm in his ear, but Miles barely heard it. He followed the man to the curb. The man turned his head slightly and smiled, just for an instant, and Miles recognized him, not by name, by pattern. The smiling voice wasn't coming through a phone. It was coming from a person Miles had already met. Chapter 8. The Tape. They found Emily in the diner's bathroom, sitting on the closed toilet lid, hugging her knees, eyes huge. No bruises, no ropes, just fear, and a note folded in her pocket. She was never taken. She was delivered. Dale collapsed when he saw her, sobbing into his hands. Moreno had to pull him back to keep the scene controlled, but control had already been stolen. Miles stood outside the diner, staring at the intersection like it was a chessboard that had flipped. The killer had placed Emily here without force, which meant someone Emily trusted had guided her, or someone had terrified her into compliance. Moreno stormed up, face tight with anger. "You said you recognized him. Who?" Miles' mind replayed the smile, the disposable camera, the way the man moved like he belonged. "I'm not certain," Miles said, "but I've seen that smile before." Moreno's eyes narrowed. "In Phoenix?" "No," Miles said, "in a case file. A man who likes to watch himself winning." Moreno stared. "Name?" Miles exhaled. "Rudy Vance," he said. "Your security contractor." Moreno's jaw clenched. "We ran him. Address is a P.O. box. No current license. It's smoke." Miles glanced toward the payphone. The cassette tape was still there. Patrol had cordoned it off, techs hovering. Moreno followed his gaze. "We're not playing his games." "We already are," Miles said. "He just keeps changing the rules."
An evidence tech approached him, holding the tape in a clear bag. We checked it. No explosives, just a cassette. Moreno took it, eyes hard. Are we listening to it here? Miles shook his head. Controlled room, no surprises in public.
They moved to an interview room in the station, one with a cassette player pulled from evidence storage. The plastic buttons were worn, the speaker tinny. It felt like stepping into the era's own throat. Moreno sat beside Miles. A uniform stood at the door. Calvin Pike sat in another room down the hall, detained, furious, demanding a lawyer. Moreno inserted the tape. Click, whir, the sound of magnetic tape turning. Static. Then the smiling voice, close, intimate. "Phoenix likes to pretend it's new," the voice said, "but it's old, built on routines, built on compliance. You can run a city like a root." Moreno's fists tightened. Miles stared forward, unmoving. The voice continued. "I learned early. People love structure. They love being told what to do. They love being spared the responsibility of choice." A pause. A breath. "I found my first supervisor in a warehouse, a man who believed order was morality." Moreno shot Miles a glance. "Calvin," she mouthed. Miles didn't respond. The tape played on. He thought he was protecting his drivers, but he was protecting the system that owns them. That's why I chose Route 6. It's a perfect line. It's obedience on wheels. Moreno's fists clenched. "And then," the voice said, "I needed an audience, someone who understands patterns, someone who believes he's above them." Miles's stomach tightened.
"Miles Harrington," the voice said softly, like a lover saying a name. Moreno's eyes flicked to him, alarm. Miles didn't move. "I read your cases. Chicago, Seattle, Detroit. You think you're chasing monsters, Miles, but you're chasing mirrors. You're addicted to systems. You just call it justice." Moreno hit stop hard. "This is psychological garbage." Miles stared at the cassette player. "It's bait," he said, "but it's also confession." Moreno's voice was tight. "We can't use a taped confession without identity." Miles nodded. "He wants us to chase the philosophy while he keeps moving bodies." Moreno restarted it, grim. The voice returned. "Now the list. Milk, bread, turkey, soap, cough syrup, map." A pause. Then McDowell, Bethany Home, Thomas, Scottsdale, Camelback, Maryvale. Moreno's face tightened. He's confirming it. "And now the final stop. The place where Route 6 meets the truth, where milk becomes blood." Moreno leaned in. "Where?" The voice chuckled softly. "You'll know. You're already thinking it." Miles was thinking it. The hub wasn't the payphone. That had been theater. The hub was something quieter, something baked into Route 6 itself. A cold storage facility, a refrigeration unit, a place where milk sat in darkness, preserved. The voice continued, almost cheerful. "Bring Calvin, bring Miles, bring the one who believes he can solve everything without paying." Moreno slammed stop again. "He wants you," she said flatly. Miles didn't deny it. "He wants the story," Miles replied. "He wants the ending where he proves a point." Moreno stood, pacing. "We arrest Calvin. We sweep the city. Miles spoke quietly. "He's already inside our sweep. He's watching our moves." Moreno stopped pacing. "You're saying he's law enforcement?" Miles didn't want to say it, but the pattern was there. Access to information, ability to move a child without force, confidence in police response, the way he predicted their tactics. Could be, Miles said, or someone adjacent, security, dispatch, city services, someone who knows how the city breathes. Moreno's radio crackled. "Detective Moreno, we just got a call. Sunridge Warehouse. Another driver missing. Dale says it's the last one. Someone named—" Moreno cut in. "Who?" The voice on the radio was nervous. "A driver named Tommy Briggs. He runs fill-in deliveries on Route 6. Miles felt the last breadcrumb click into place. BTSCM. Briggs. Thomas. Scottsdale. Camelback. Maryvale. A man's name hidden in street lines. Moreno's face went pale. "He's taking the last piece." Miles stood. "The final stop isn't a location, it's a person." Moreno stared at him. "Where would he take him?" Miles picked up the cassette tape bag. "Where milk becomes blood," he repeated. "Cold storage, somewhere Route 6 ends." Moreno grabbed her jacket. "We go now." Miles's pager vibrated one more time, as if approving. "Good. Run the route. Don't miss."
Chapter 9. Cold Chain. Sunridge's cold storage annex sat behind the main warehouse like a second heart. Metal doors, refrigeration units humming, frost clinging to seams despite the desert outside. The air around it smelt faintly of ammonia and cold steel. Moreno arrived with 3 units and a grim silence. No sirens, no announcement. The killer loved predictability. Tonight they tried to give him uncertainty. Miles walked beside Moreno, breath steady. "He chose cold for a reason," he said. "Preservation," Moreno replied. "Control," Miles said. "Cold makes everything slower, even panic." They reached the loading bay doors. A security keypad blinked green, waiting. Moreno nodded at a tech. He pulled wires, bypassing the lock with careful hands. Miles watched the keypad. Numbers worn, patterns. Worn keys told stories, what people used most. The door rolled up with a mechanical groan. Cold air spilled out like fog, spilling across their boots. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered. Pallets of dairy products sat stacked like bricks, milk cartons, cheese blocks, butter crates. The hum of compressors sounded like distant thunder. "Tommy Briggs!" Moreno called. Her voice echoed, swallowed by cold. No answer. They moved in, boots squeaking on concrete, breath visible now. Miles's hands tucked into his coat pockets for warmth, fingers brushing his notebook. A sound came from deeper inside, metal tapping, slow, deliberate. Moreno signaled the units to spread. One officer moved left between pallets, flashlight cutting a narrow beam. Another stayed near the door, radio ready. Moreno and Miles moved center, toward the sound. The tapping stopped. Miles felt the silence sharpen. He glanced upward. In the 90s, warehouses often had security cameras, but many didn't record continuously. Some were dummies, some were VHS loops nobody checked until it was too late. Moreno whispered, "Do you see anything?" Miles pointed subtly. On the floor, a trail, tiny white flakes like chalk, milk powder or flour. It led between pallets, deeper in.
They followed. The trail ended at a walk-in cooler door, thick, insulated, heavy, the kind with a latch that could lock from the outside if someone wanted. Moreno put her hand on the latch, then paused. "If he's in there." Miles nodded. "We don't open it blind." Moreno motioned for an officer. He moved in, weapon drawn. Then Miles heard it, a faint thud from inside the cooler, once, twice, like someone knocking weakly. Moreno's face tightened. "Tommy," she murmured. "Hold on." She yanked the latch. The door opened with a gasp of colder air. Inside, lit by a single buzzing bulb, Tommy Briggs sat on the floor against a wall of stacked milk crates, wrists bound with packing tape, mouth gagged. His eyes were wide with terror. His cheeks were red from cold. Moreno rushed in. "Tommy, you're okay. You're okay." An officer moved to cut the tape. Miles stayed at the threshold, scanning. On the wall behind Tommy, someone had taped a receipt, large like a banner, printed in huge block letters. Route 6 ends here. Below it, stapled to the receipt, was a Polaroid of Calvin Pike in the interview room, and another Polaroid, Miles at the payphone, and another, Emily in the diner bathroom. The killer's scrapbook. Moreno looked up, rage flooding her face. He was here, she hissed. Miles saw something else, a thin wire running along the floor, disappearing under a crate. "Stop," Miles snapped. Moreno froze. The officer cutting tape froze mid-motion. Miles pointed. "Wire." The officer backed away carefully. Moreno swallowed. "Tripwire."
Miles's mind raced. The killer wasn't just collecting photos, he was setting consequences. Moreno's radio crackled, distant. "Detective, we've got Calvin Pike screaming in holding. Says he's been paged." Miles's pager vibrated at the same time. Message: "You found the last driver, now find the last lie." Moreno stared at the wire, then at the receipt banner, then at Miles. "This place is rigged." Miles nodded. "He wants us to pull something we shouldn't." Moreno backed out of the cooler slowly, keeping eyes on the wire. "Bomb squad," she ordered into her radio. "Now, evac the annex." They moved everyone out, leaving Tommy inside the cooler for the moment, protected from whatever the wire might trigger. The cold would keep him alive longer than a sudden blast would. Outside, the desert night felt warm by contrast. Moreno paced, furious. "She could have killed them," she said. "All of them." "He still can," Miles said. Moreno turned on him. "You think Calvin's in on it?" Miles didn't answer immediately. He pictured Calvin's crack in the interview room, the confession of recruitment, the obsession with order. Calvin was the perfect pawn, and pawns often believed they were kings. I think Calvin believes he's helping, or believed it, until he realized the leash tightens both ways. Moreno's radio crackled again. "Detective, Calvin says the pager message reads, 'Confess or she freezes.' He thinks it's about Tommy, but—" Moreno's eyes widened. "Emily!" Miles's pulse spiked. "He moved the threat," he said. "He wants us divided." Moreno snapped commands into the radio. Units to Dale's house, units to the diner, units to search for Emily. Chaos, exactly what the killer wanted.
Miles grabbed Moreno's arm gently, forcing her to look at him. "Stop playing defense," he said. "He's not trying to win by killing everyone. He's trying to win by proving a point." Moreno's eyes were wet with rage. "What point?" Miles looked back at the cold annex. "That people choose order over people," he said. "That supervisors will sacrifice drivers. That cops will sacrifice truth for quiet." Moreno's jaw clenched. "Not tonight." Miles's pager vibrated again. A final message. "Midnight, Sunridge Dispatch. Bring Calvin. Bring your honesty." Moreno stared at the digits. She said, "Dispatch office." Miles nodded. "That's the nerve center," he said. "Schedules, calls, control." Moreno's eyes sharpened. "We go." Miles didn't smile. "And we don't miss," he said. In the annex behind them, the refrigeration unit hummed, steady, obedient, like a heartbeat that didn't care who lived or died, only that the temperature stayed perfect.
Chapter 10.
Don't miss. Sunridge Dispatch was a glass-walled box overlooking the warehouse floor. Computers with chunky monitors, fax machine, dot matrix printer, route maps pinned to corkboard. At midnight, it was supposed to be quiet. It wasn't. Moreno arrived with Miles and 2 officers, Calvin Pike in cuffs between them. Calvin looked smaller now, the bravado drained out. He kept shaking his head, whispering, "This isn't what I meant. This isn't—" Moreno pushed him into Dispatch. "Sit," she ordered. Calvin sat hard on a rolling chair, cuffs clinking against metal. Miles scanned the room. The route map on the wall had Route 6 highlighted in red marker, thick and obsessive. A stack of blank receipts sat beside the printer. A disposable camera lay on the desk, half used. Moreno saw it too. That camera wasn't there earlier, she said. Miles's pager vibrated. Message, "Welcome home." Moreno's pager vibrated as well. Same message. The killer wanted them both reading, both reacting. Moreno's voice went low. "He's in the building." Miles's eyes moved to the window overlooking the warehouse floor. Workers moved below, unaware. Forklifts beeped, pallets shifted, the city's routine continuing while a killer wrote philosophy above it. Calvin started shaking harder. "He said if I brought you—" Calvin's voice cracked. "He said he'd stop." Moreno's eyes burned. "Stop what, Calvin?" Calvin swallowed. "Stop punishing." Miles felt it land. Punishing, not killing. In the killer's mind, this was discipline, correction. Moreno shoved a photo in front of Calvin. Miguel in the canal. "Is this punishment?" Calvin flinched, tears rising. "I didn't know it would go that far." Miles watched Calvin's face and saw the truth. Calvin had been recruited by fear and flattery, convinced he could manage a predator with spreadsheets and calm words. Moreno leaned close. "Who is it?" she demanded. "Name." Calvin shook his head. "I never saw him," he whispered. "Only the voice." Miles stepped forward, voice quiet but sharp. "You did see him," he said. "You just didn't realize it." Calvin looked up, confused, desperate. Miles gestured toward the desk, the disposable camera. "You documented incidents," Miles said. "You kept receipts. You circled letters. You created a file. But the Polaroids, those came from someone with access and patience." Moreno's eyes narrowed. "Who in Dispatch has that access?" A woman's voice answered from the doorway, smooth as cold milk. "Me." They all turned. The dispatcher stood there, late 30s, hair pulled back, wearing a Sunridge polo under a cardigan like she belonged in an office, not a nightmare. A badge clipped to her waist, a pager on her belt, clean, new. Her nameplate on the desk read M. Sanchez. Moreno's face tightened. Marla Sanchez. Marla smiled gently. It was the smile from the street. Miles felt the final click of pattern. The smiling voice wasn't a man. It was a woman who could soften her tone, round her consonants, make static carry warmth like poison. Marla stepped inside calmly, closing the door behind her. Detective Moreno, Miles Harrington. Moreno's hand moved toward her weapon. An officer lifted his gun. Marla raised both hands. "If you shoot me," she said, voice still calm, "you will never find the child." Moreno froze. "Emily is alive," she snapped. Marla tilted her head. "Alive is a temperature," she said softly, "and we've established how cold Phoenix can get when you put someone where the system stores things." Miles's jaw tightened. "Where is she?"
Marla's eyes flicked to Miles. "You're the only one who can earn that answer," she said. Moreno's voice was lethal. "This is over." Marla smiled, still that gentle, maddening smile. "Over? No. This is the conclusion, the part where you decide what matters." She walked to the route map and tapped Route 6 with one finger. "This city runs because people obey," she said. "Drivers obey schedules, supervisors obey corporate pressure, police obey politics, everyone obeys something." Moreno's eyes blazed. "People don't deserve to die because a schedule exists." Marla turned, and the smile faded for the first time. "They died because they thought they could step outside consequences," she said. "Eric broke the agreement. Miguel tried to warn him. The route broke. I corrected it." Miles looked at Calvin. Calvin was crying now, quietly, shoulders shaking. "You recruited him," Miles said to Marla. Marla nodded. "Calvin understands what you don't," she said. "Order is mercy. Chaos is cruelty." Moreno's voice shook with rage. "You threatened children." Marla's expression didn't change. "Children are the only leverage that makes adults tell the truth," she said. "You know that. You just pretend you don't." Miles took one step forward. "You paged me to come here. Why?" Marla's eyes softened, almost sincere. "Because you are the cleanest version of the lie," she said. "You solve chaos and call it justice, but you love the puzzle more than the people. You've built a career on patterns of pain." Moreno snapped, "Enough."
Marla ignored her. "I wanted to see if you'd admit it," she said to Miles. "If you'd confess that you're not outside this, that you are part of the machine." Miles stared at her, steady. "You're wrong," he said simply. Marla's lips curled. "Am I?" Miles reached slowly into his coat pocket, not for a weapon, for his notebook. He opened it and flipped to the first page, where he had written the grocery list letters. He held it up. "You made a list," he said. "You made streets. You made a route. You made a philosophy. But you made one mistake." Marla's eyes narrowed. "Which is?" Miles said, "You assumed you were the only one who understood patterns." He turned the notebook so Moreno could see. Under the street list, Miles had written a second column, store numbers from the receipts. He'd been collecting them quietly, even when the list screamed for attention. Moreno's eyes widened as she read. "They're not random," she whispered. Miles nodded. "They're coordinates," he said. "Store numbers correspond to dispatch assignment codes. The receipts weren't just messages, they were breadcrumbs back to you." Marla's smile twitched, the first crack. Moreno's voice went sharp. "Marla, step away from the door." Marla's hand moved, not to a gun, but to the fax machine. She slapped a button. The machine whined, feeding paper. Miles's pager vibrated instantly. A final message appeared. "You'll find her where milk becomes blood." Moreno's face went white. "The annex." Miles moved fast. "The bomb squad cleared the wire," he said, "but they didn't find a child." Marla's smile returned, thin now. "Because she's not in the cooler," she said. "She's in the—" Moreno lunged, grabbing Marla's arm. The officer moved in. Marla struggled harder than she looked capable of, desperation slipping through the calm. "She's in the truck," Marla spat, the philosophy cracking into panic.
"She's in the truck," Marla spat, the philosophy cracking into panic. "Route 6 truck, refrigerated. You'll never—"
Moreno slammed her against the wall, cuffs snapping on. "Which truck?" Marla laughed, breathless. "Don't miss," she whispered. Miles ran.
They tore across the warehouse floor, past forklifts, past workers shouting. Miles scanned the row of refrigerated trucks, white metal doors lined like teeth. Each had route numbers stenciled near the handle. Route 6. Miles sprinted to it, yanking the handle. Locked. He looked around, then saw it. A key ring hanging on a hook beside dispatch, labeled Route Keys. Moreno arrived behind him, breathing hard, key ring in hand. Miles shoved the right key into the lock and turned. The door swung open, cold air spilling out. Inside, Emily sat wrapped in a blanket, cheeks red, eyes wide. A small portable radio played softly, an old station, tinny, like someone trying to make the horror feel normal. Miles stepped in, crouched, voice steady. "Emily," he said, "you're safe." She stared at him, trembling. The lady said if I was quiet, my dad would live." Miles swallowed hard. "Your dad's alive," he said, "and you did exactly what you needed to do." Moreno's voice cracked behind him. "Emily, sweetheart." Miles lifted Emily gently and carried her out into warm air that felt like mercy. Behind them, in the dispatch office, Marla Sanchez sat cuffed and smiling again, because even in capture she believed she'd proven something. But Miles wasn't interested in her philosophy. He looked at Moreno, sweat and frost mixing on his skin, and said the only truth that mattered. "He used routine as a weapon," he said, "so we break it. We protect people first, always." Moreno nodded once, hard, decisive, and somewhere in Phoenix a payphone stood silent at last, its cradle empty, its geometry broken.
End of chapter and end of story. Please like and subscribe to support our channel. And to listen to more murder mysteries and investigative stories,